Hey, Senator Radio, how are we doing? Good to be with you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to all these extraordinary public servants and future public servants, like Leslie, like Dolores, who are going to make this community proud when they win these elections in November and hold these important positions of public trust. Are you all with me on this? Really proud. Great work. We're excited for what you're going to do. And to those already holding office, Senator Carol Alvarado, who stood on the floor of the Senate for hours to stand up not for herself or a political party, but for the right to vote at its moment of greatest peril. She did that for all of us, for this generation, and for every generation to come. She is a hero of mine. She is a hero of ours. Thank you, Carol. Representative Morales and Representative Perez, who were willing to risk leaving the floor of the House of Representatives, go all the way to Washington, D.C., perhaps risk arrest when they came back to the state of Texas, because our democracy, this thing that has worked más o menos for the last 246 years and counting, was under the gravest attack that we've ever seen, and nowhere more so than in the state of Texas, where they wanted to reduce the right to vote, where they've closed 750 polling places in this state, twice the number of the next closest state, and most of those polling place closures in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods throughout Texas. When we see a line 6 hours deep outside of TSU on the 8th of November, and I predict that we will, part of us is proud of those who would endure the 6 hours to be able to cast that ballot, but almost all of us are overcome with that shame that we feel, that we subject anyone to this indignity in their own democracy. This attack on voting is not an attack on everyone equally. It is an attack on some Texans to reduce their political power at the same time that it elevates the power of other Texans. And it is these public servants and their fight that grab the attention, not just of this state, but of the country. So when we win this election, and when we replace these attacks on our democracy with ensuring that every single one of us has the right to vote without suppression, without fear of intimidation, when we replace Confederate Heroes Day as a state holiday with Voting Day, Election Day as a state holiday, we know who to thank, who laid the groundwork, who made this possible. And listen, I want to thank all of you. This is how you're choosing to meet this moment. We just heard about everything that we face, the attacks on our fellow Texans at this moment, the darkness that has literally descended on the state when the geniuses in power could not keep the power on for all of us last February. Instead of being tempted to despair or succumbing or submitting to this, you are literally here right now at this defining moment of truth, committing yourself to doing whatever it takes in order to overcome this. And I just want to share with you, from having traveled every part of this state, every part of Harris County, we are going to win this election on the night of November 8th. We're going to win because we are fighting for every woman to make her own decisions about her own body, her own future, and her own health care. And we remember that abortion was just as illegal in this state 50 years ago as it is today. But no one came riding to the rescue of Texas women. In fact, it was Texas women like Jane Roe, like her two attorneys, Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, who prevailed upon an all-male United States Supreme Court to win protection for the right to privacy, to make these very personal and often very painful decisions without risk or interference from your government. If it was Texas women who won that right 50 years ago, I tell you what, it's going to be Texas women today who win it back in 2022. We're going to win because we prioritize the lives of our kids over the NRA, the gun lobby, any special interest, Greg Abbott and his political prospects in the Republican presidential primary. Our kids are more important than all of that. And listen, we're going to make sure, because their eyes are on us, and the only voice and vote they get in this election is through our actions. What we are willing to do now every single day through the 8th of November. And listen, we can better fund those schools and their safety and security. We can, as the governor wants us to do, increase mental health care spending. We're 51st in the nation today in access to a mental health care provider. The largest inpatient mental health care facility in the state is the Harris County Jail in downtown Houston, Texas. Yes, we can do better on that. But if we fail to acknowledge that an 18-year-old could legally walk into a gun store and buy not one, but 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and use that weapon that was originally designed for use in war, in combat, to kill enemy soldiers at 500 yards and to penetrate a steel helmet, and was used against children at 5 feet with nothing on their heads but a baseball cap, whose parents could only identify their bodies by the shoes that they were wearing or the DNA swab that they took. If we fail to act now that we know the consequences and the eyes of our kids are upon us, then the culpability is not just Greg Abbott's or one political party, it is on all of us. So as Carol said, at a minimum, let us raise the age to buy one of these weapons of war to 21. Let us make sure that there's a red flag law so that if anyone has one and is threatening to use it, we can intervene before it's too late. Let us make sure that we have a universal background check so if you buy a firearm and you're a danger to yourself or to anyone else, we're able to intervene before it's too late. Tell you what, we're going to win because we have the backs of school teachers, of counselors, of librarians who find themselves under attack by their own government and are leaving the profession right now by the thousands. They're working 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. They're being asked to report the parents of transgender kids and have those children turned over to Child Protective Services, the worst run foster care program in America today. You ask the governor about a legitimate issue, why he cannot keep the lights on, and he might say, watch out for that CRT in the classroom, trying to make us afraid of our own history. Or maybe better put, trying to make us afraid of everyone's history. Every Texan, whether indigenous, brought here against their will, or as an immigrant who came to this state to make it better, all of us deserve to have our stories told. And when we win this election, we're going to make sure that those stories are told. We're going to pay our teachers enough to just work 1 job instead of 2 or 3. And we're going to listen to them. When they tell us that they need to be able to connect with those kids in front of them, they don't need any more high stakes, high pressure, standardized tests. We will cancel the STAR in the state of Texas and teachers get back to teaching. We're going to win because we're running against Greg Abbott, arguably the worst governor in the United States of America today. Let me give it to you by the numbers. This is more than just how we feel. It's been 19 days. 19 days since Abbott's extreme abortion ban, with no exception for rape, no exception for incest, that begins at conception, went into law. For 19 days, in a state that has one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the developed world, 3 times as deadly for black women in the state of Texas, no woman been able to make her own decisions about her own health care, her own body, or her own future. Not only is this stopping those women, including those who wore the uniform of this country, put their lives on the line defending not a president or a party, but the Constitution of the United States. Not only has it dishonored their service, I guarantee you, it will be killing women across the state of Texas, perhaps nowhere more so than right here in Houston, Texas. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we know this much. There are some who, with their resources and their privilege, will be able to lead this state. They have a complicated pregnancy, an ectopic pregnancy, or for whatever reason, it is theirs and theirs alone, they choose to end that pregnancy. But there are others who are still working $7.25 an hour jobs, and not one of them, but 2 of them, or 3 of them to make ends meet. There are those in the least insured state of Texas, least insured state in America, who do not have the ability to see a doctor or get any kind of medical care, advice, or help at all. It is to those women who falls the fate of the suffering, the devastation, and yes, the death that we are certainly to see in Texas, because everyone here knows that outlawing abortion will not stop abortions being performed in the state of Texas. It just means that there will be that much more deadly. We'll see that much more loss of life. And that is why, regardless of whether we're Republicans or Democrats, live in big cities or rural counties, we must rise up together and defend every woman's right to make that decision for herself. And we will. It has been 16 weeks to the day, 16 weeks this day, that those 19 children and their 2 heroic teachers who had already sacrificed so much for those kids, who were willing to give their lives for them, to try to make sure that some of them can survive that attack on the 24th of May in Uvalde. It has been that long, and this government has yet to lift a finger to make it any less likely that your kids or my kids will find themselves in the same situation, the same fate, the same fortune, and the same future, in a state that has 5 of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history just in the last 5 years, all of them on Greg Abbott's watch. In fact, the only thing he's done is make it easier for people who should not have a firearm to carry them openly on our streets. Law enforcement can tell us that for years we had a license to carry program, which meant if you want to carry a gun in public, you got to go through a background check. You have to go through some training. We have to be able to vet you in case you're a danger to yourself or to someone else. Greg Abbott ignored those who wear the uniform, who put their lives on the line, in a state where more cops have been gunned down than in any other in the Union. Even though 38,000 times over the last 5 years, a license to carry a gun was denied to one of our fellow Texans because they were deemed too dangerous to do so, he turned his back on law enforcement, on public safety, on all of us and our kids, and signed permitless carry into law. Today, the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in the state of Texas is gun violence. And though we know and will never forget the names of those children in Uvalde, we must also know this. So many kids, so many of our fellow Texans are killed, are murdered on a daily basis throughout this state. It is so numbingly common, their names don't make the newspaper, their faces do not make the broadcast news. We have an historic opportunity as Texans who have this long, proud tradition of responsible gun ownership to do the right thing, to defend the Second Amendment, but do a far better job of protecting the lives of our kids, and to do justice by those families in Uvalde. And justice, ladies and gentlemen, needs action right now. Are you with me on this? And it's been 18 months since in the energy capital of the world, our lights went out, the heat stopped running, the water stopped flowing because it was frozen in your pipes. When it ran again, they burst, and for the second time in 5 years, your homes were flooded as you still wait for the money that should be here after Harvey to rebuild those homes that were damaged the first time. And while that was happening, while you were suffering, while you were dying in your homes, more than 700 of our fellow Texans lost their lives. An 11-year-old boy not too far from here in Conroe, Texas. His mom, unable to pile enough blankets on his shivering body, he's dead the next day. A 75-year-old Vietnam-era veteran who could no longer charge his oxygen tank in his home because there's no electricity running through it, takes it out to his truck to try to do it there. They find him dead of hypothermia the next day. People who burned up in their apartments because their parents were burning the furniture to try to keep them warm, or who died of carbon monoxide poisoning in their garage trying to do the same thing. This was not caused by God or by Mother Nature, but by the man in the highest position of power who ignored the warnings about the vulnerability of the grid. And while we were suffering and dying and going without, his best friends and his largest campaign contributors made billions of dollars. $11 billion were made by energy traders and pipeline companies over the course of 5 days in February. And to add insult to injury, that grid is still not fixed. To add even more insult to that injury, you and I are left holding the bag, paying $45 on average per month more in our utility bills right now. But there's an answer to all of that. It's winning this election. It's fixing the grid. It's connecting ERCOT to the national grid so we can bring power down when we need it. And it's taking those energy traders and pipeline CEOs to court and getting our $11 billion back and returning it to the ratepayers in the state of Texas. The last number I'm going to give you before I close and open it up to your questions, to your comments, to your suggestions, and to your ideas is 8. It's been nearly 8 years since Greg Abbott was sworn into office. 8 years for him to use that highest position of public trust to actually help our fellow Texans. And I'll tell you, this is where he's left us. We are now today the least insured state in America. That means that more kids die of diabetes right here in this state than in any other. It means that our largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system, not just here in Harris, but throughout the state of Texas. And it means that all of us are paying more for this through higher property taxes or through higher insurance premiums. There's an answer to this as well. Not only is it winning this election, but it's bringing back $10 billion of our federal income taxes to Texas every year, expanding Medicaid so everyone can see a doctor, fill a prescription, take their kiddo to a mental health care provider, and in the bargain, lowering our property taxes so that we can actually afford to pay them. It's been 8 years, and though Governor Abbott is going to try to scare all of us about crime, and he's going to try to blame Democrats who have not been in power in that office for 28 years for what is going on in the state of Texas. Let me just give it to you by the numbers. So, in this state, on Greg Abbott's watch, homicides have gone up 50%. The guy who told us that he was going to eliminate rape, when asked by a reporter what he was going to do about the fact that there's no exception for rape in his abortion ban, there are more rapes committed in Texas than any other state in this country. Our ability to bring a rapist to justice has declined by half, and there are 3,000 untested rape kits at DPS headquarters in Austin, Texas right now. Violent crime is up in Texas, but violent crime is up because Greg Abbott has not done a single thing to bring it down. We're going to make sure that we take it seriously, that we protect our families, and especially women who find themselves under attack in this state, unlike any other place in this country. We're going to make sure that we have their backs, that we fully support them, that we bring these rapists to justice, but that we also not only restore protections for their right to choose, but ensure that they are treated as full, equal citizens. That means the same pay for the same day's work. That means equal treatment under the law for every single issue. And it means supporting these extraordinary women who are running for public office right now in this state. Last one. 8 years. 8 years, and this guy in that office is going to try to scare all of us about immigrants coming to the state of Texas. Ask them why your property taxes have gone up $20 billion, or 40% in the last 8 years. And you just say, look out, there's Mexicans right over there. 8 years on this guy's watch. Any of the chaos that you see right now, that is Greg Abbott. This ineffectual stunt of busing migrants to Chicago, or Washington, D.C., or New York City, building 1.5 miles of border wall at extraordinary expense, or worse yet, involuntarily activating 10,000 members of the Guard. 10,000 fellow Texans who had a week to say goodbye to their kids, to their spouse, to their career, to their community, for a 1-year deployment on the border, with no power to arrest or to detain, taken away from jobs that they were badly needed in, like teaching school or being the medical professionals in our communities at a time that we need them. 8 of them so far have lost their lives. 4 of them have taken their own lives. 4 more have died under questionable circumstances. Not a single one was killed by a single immigrant. Instead of these kinds of stunts, we need solutions. This is what I say, based on what I've heard from you and our fellow Texans from across the state. Look, if you want to come to this country, we want you to be able to do so, but you must follow our laws. And on our side, we're going to make sure that our laws reflect our values, our interests, our needs, the reality right here on the ground in the most diverse city in the United States of America. And Houston is so strong and so successful and so great, not despite, but because it is a city of immigrants, people from the world over who have come here to do better for themselves, but also to do better for all of us. And they have. If we ensure that if you want to come here to work, or join your family, or seek asylum because to go back to your home country means certain death for you or your child, I want there to be a safe, legal, orderly path for you to be able to do that. It's been since Ronald Reagan was president that we had any kind of rewrite of our immigration laws. No state better than Texas is prepared to lead the effort on this. We border Mexico. We are a state comprised of people the planet over. We lead on this. And all of a sudden we take all those, coming to work, join families, seek asylum, off the table. All that's left is anyone, the vast minority, who want to do us harm. If you are trying to traffic drugs into this country or this community, smuggle human beings, we're going to be able to stop you. Right now, a needle in a haystack of people who are trying to come here for legitimate reasons. We solve those legitimate challenges. All that is left is the threat. We are going to be that much stronger, that much safer going forward. And oh, by the way, we in Texas lead on this. We in Texas solve this. No longer will immigration be left to demagogues like Greg Abbott, who seek to vilify and demonize immigrants, who tell us that we must repel this invasion, we must take matters into our own hands, who describes Texas as being under attack. That's the kind of message that was heard by a young man with another weapon of war in Allen, Texas in 2019, who drove that AK-47 650 miles to El Paso, walked into a Walmart and opened fire on people who looked like to him that they were the immigrants who were coming to invade this state. It is time that we solve this problem once and for all, and that we solve it right here in the state of Texas. We can do this. Now, as we turn this second microphone over to you, I want to make this offer to you. If you want to be part of the solution on this, if you realize there is no candidate alone, no political party by itself that is going to win this historic, incredibly important election, that the responsibility rests with every single one of us, and we must reach the voters who are the very targets of the voter suppression and voter intimidation that the senator and the two state representatives fought against. Then I need your help. I need you to sign up with one of our volunteers who's wearing a yellow vest. I see one right here, I see another one back here, I see another one here, and another one here. They have on their clipboards that they are carrying block walking shifts, which means that you sign up for one of those, you're going to meet your neighbors and you're going to go knock on the doors of those people who were targeted for exclusion from this very democracy. In 2020, arguably the most important presidential election in our lifetimes, 700,000 people in Harris County who were eligible to did not cast a ballot. Since then, more than 200,000 new voters have entered the polls. These are overwhelmingly young people and naturalized citizens. That's nearly 1 million people that we have yet to hear from or whose votes have yet to be counted. 1 million people right here in Harris County. And in 2018, when we ran against the junior senator who, when you were freezing, was at the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun, we only lost by 216,000 votes. There are 1 million untapped votes in Harris County. Are you willing to go out there and find those voters with me so that we win this election? Thank you so much for coming out today. Thanks to everybody who got us kicked off. Looking forward to what you have to say. I'm looking forward to